A deep, silent darkness blankets the Giza Plateau, broken only by 1 billion piercing stars. Beneath that ancient sky, a civilization without compasses or maps conquered deserts and seas. Their secret was written in the heavens. By the end of this, you will understand how to read the night sky through the eyes of an Egyptian navigator. We will uncover how a star's first glimpse at dawn could predict a river's flood, and how the unsetting northern stars guided pharaohs to the afterlife. What does it truly mean to find your way home when the only road is made of light? This celestial map was not a cold, impersonal grid. For the Egyptians, the sky was alive, a divine entity watching over the world. They saw it as the goddess Nut, her star-studded body eternally arched over the earth. Her fingertips touched the western horizon, her toes the east, and each night she swallowed the sun, only to give birth to it again at dawn. This was not mere poetry, it was their cosmological reality. The stars were not distant balls of gas, they were the very jewels and flames adorning her form. This belief transformed the practical act of navigation into a sacred dialogue. When a priest or a sailor looked up to find his bearing, he was not just observing points of light, he was reading the body of a goddess. Her predictable, cyclical movements provided a divine clock and compass. The rising of a specific star just before the sun, an event they called a heliacal rising, was not just a seasonal marker, it was a signal from Nut herself. It told them when the life-giving Nile flood was imminent, dictating the entire agricultural and social rhythm of the kingdom. How could you ever feel lost when you believed you were walking beneath the protective, guiding presence of a mother goddess? Her eternal cycles offered not just direction but profound meaning. To track the goddess Nut's sacred movements, Egyptian astronomers developed a system of incredible precision. They divided the band of sky near the ecliptic into 36 star groups, known to us as decans. Each of these constellations was a distinct marker in the celestial river of time. Throughout the course of a single night, you would witness a procession of these decans rising one after another on the eastern horizon. The first to appear after sunset signaled the start of the night celestial clock. The rhythm was so reliable that the rising of each new decan marked the passing of a single hour of darkness, but the grand cycle was even more profound. Across the entire year, a new decan would make its first appearance or heliacal rising just before the dawn, and this event marked the beginning of a new 10-day week in their star-based calendar. Imagine the practical magic of this. A priest standing on a temple roof just before sunrise would see a specific star pattern break free from the sun's glare for the first time in a year. That moment was his divine memo. It told him that 10 days had officially passed since the last decan rose, and it was time to prepare for a specific festival or to announce to farmers that the next phase of the Nile cycle was approaching. This was not an abstract science, it was the beating heart of their civilization, synchronized to the cosmos. The decans wove together the sacred and the mundane, telling them not only when to pray, but also when to plant and when to harvest. The sky was not just a map, it was their master calendar, and its 36 pages turned with perfect, predictable grace. While the decans performed their nightly dance across the sky, another group of stars held a position of absolute authority, the unmoving sentinels of the north. The Egyptians called them the Ikimu Sek, the imperishable ones. These were the circumpolar stars, the brilliant points of light that never, ever dipped below the horizon. While other constellations rose and set, these chosen few simply wheeled in a tight, eternal circle around the celestial pole. They were the fixed anchors in the turning dome of the night, and their constancy was a source of profound power and reassurance. For a civilization that saw the world in cycles of life, death, and rebirth, the existence of stars that were truly deathless was a cosmic promise. They became symbols of eternity and the destination for a pharaoh's soul. But their power was also intensely practical. Imagine you are a traveler in the vast, featureless expanse of the desert at night. The shifting sands offer no landmarks. The moon might be absent. In that disorienting darkness, all you need to do is locate the imperishable ones. One star in particular, a bright guardian we know today as Kochab in the bowl of the Little Dipper, served as a near-perfect marker of the North Celestial Pole for centuries. By finding that one fixed point in the spinning sky, you could instantly determine all four cardinal directions. Your entire world, which moments before was a formless void, suddenly snapped into a clear, navigable grid. This was not just stargazing, it was an act of cosmic orientation that could mean the difference between life and death in the desert. The same principle that guided a lone caravan also guided the architects of the pyramids. The breathtaking precision with which the Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to the cardinal points is no accident of massive construction. It is a direct result of sighting on these imperishable stars, a physical manifestation of their eternal, unchanging truth carved into stone for the ages. Of all the stars that adorned the goddess Nut, one held a power so direct it shaped the destiny of the kingdom. This was Sirius, the dog star, known to the Egyptians as Sopdet. Its annual reappearance was the single most anticipated celestial event of their entire year. After a long period of invisibility, lost in the sun's blinding glare, Sopdet would make its heliacal rising. It would emerge for just a brief moment in the pre-dawn light, a single, brilliant spark hovering low on the eastern horizon before the rising sun washed it away again. This fleeting glimpse was their starting pistol. It signaled the imminent arrival of the Nile's life-giving flood. The timing was not a loose correlation, it was a near-perfect synchronization. The star's first morning appearance and the river's first surge of muddy, fertile water were two parts of the same cosmic event. Think of the absolute certainty this provided. In a land dependent on the desert's edge, the entire agricultural cycle from planting to harvest hung on the Nile's unpredictable moods, yet the Egyptians were never truly in the dark. Their celestial herald gave them a warning. The moment a priest spotted Sopdet, the message would flash across the land. The new year, known as Wepet Renpet, the opening of the year, had begun. Farmers knew to prepare their fields and irrigation channels for the coming deluge. This was not just a date on a calendar, it was a national mobilization triggered by a point of light. But the star's guidance did not end with the harvest. The floodwaters themselves transformed the landscape, submerging familiar riverbanks and landmarks. For sailors and merchants navigating the Nile's suddenly vast and unfamiliar surface, the reappearance of Sirius in the night sky, now visible for longer periods, provided a fixed, brilliant beacon in the heavens. It guided their heavily laden vessels along the newly swollen river, ensuring that the bounty promised by the flood could be transported to every corner of Egypt. Sopdet was more than a star, it was the kingdom's chief administrator, its chief agronomist, and its master navigator, all rolled into one celestial entity. Its silent flash in the morning sky set the entire rhythm of civilization into motion. So where exactly in that star-studded body of Nut were these celestial markers found? Look directly at the northern sky, to the group of stars we call the Big Dipper. The Egyptians saw a very different shape to them. This was not a ladle, it was the mesketu, the bull's thigh or the plow. This constellation was a celestial engine of immense power. Its stars formed the shape of an ox's foreleg, a symbol of strength and relentless driving force. But its true magic was in its motion. Throughout the long desert night, you could watch the mesketu perform a slow, deliberate pirouette around the pole star. Its position was a giant, unerring clock hand sweeping across the sky. When its central stars were oriented vertically, it might signal the middle of the night. As it swung horizontally, it could mark the approach of dawn. This was a timepiece that required no gears or weights, only a knowing eye fixed upon the imperishable ones. It was a clock that never needed winding, perfectly synchronized with the universe itself. Yet the merkhet's role was even more profound than telling time. It was intimately linked to the destiny of a pharaoh. In the pyramid texts, some of the oldest religious writings in the world, we find a powerful spell. It describes how the king's soul would not descend into the earth, but would ascend to join the company of the imperishable stars and his vehicle for this cosmic journey. The celestial ferryman would use the merkhet, the great bull's leg, as a divine gangplank to haul the pharaoh's spirit up into the eternal, unwavering light of the northern sky. This single constellation was both a practical tool for the living and a sacred ladder for the dead. Can you see how the familiar pattern of the Big Dipper transforms when viewed through their eyes? It is no longer just a collection of stars. It is a functional clock, a symbol of royal power, and a gateway to immortality, all revolving silently above your head every single night. This seemingly simple tool, the merkhet, transformed stargazing into an exact science. Its design was pure elegance, a forked horizontal bar made of wood or bone, from which a plumb line, a simple weighted string, was suspended. But in the hands of a skilled priest, this humble instrument became a window into the precise mechanics of the cosmos. To use it, an astronomer would not work alone. He would set up two of these devices, carefully aligning them along a true north-south line, a task made possible by sighting on the imperishable circumpolar stars. Once aligned, these two merkhets created a fixed celestial meridian, an imaginary north-south line slicing directly overhead through the very heart of the sky. The priest would then position himself behind one merkhet and peer past its forked end, using the suspended plumb line as a vertical reference. His focus was on a specific decan star as it rose in the east. He would wait, his gaze fixed as that star climbed higher and higher. The critical moment came when the star crossed the meridian line defined by his two instruments, passing directly overhead at its highest point in the sky. The instant it aligned perfectly with the plumb line of his sighting merkhet, he had captured its transit. This moment of perfect alignment was the ancient equivalent of a stopwatch clicking. Because they knew the exact sequence of the decan stars, the timing of this trance, it told them which hour of the night had just begun. It was a system of celestial timekeeping of breathtaking accuracy, all orchestrated with a forked stick and a piece of string. Think of the concentration required, standing on a cold temple roof in the dead of night, waiting for a single point of light to intersect with a dangling thread. That silent, focused moment was where myth met mathematics, where the grand story of the goddess Nut was translated into actionable data that could set the clocks of an entire civilization. Yet this celestial clock required more than just a sighting tool. It needed a way to record its relentless, silent ticking. That is where the Bayou-Ah, the star clock palm rib, enters the story. Picture a simple strip of wood or bone, not much longer than your forearm, carved with a series of precise, evenly spaced notches. Each notch represented a specific unit of time, a measure of the sky's slow rotation. The observer, likely a temple astronomer, would sit in a fixed position on the ground, holding this notched rib vertically in front of his face. With his other hand, he would raise a sighting tool, perhaps a simple forked stick or even just his finger, aligning it with his eye. His entire body became the instrument's central pivot. He would then focus on a chosen decan star as it rose in the east. As the star climbed, he would move the sighting tool along the notches of the palm rib, tracking the star's ascent against the fixed scale of his own seated body. Each new notch the star passed marked the completion of another interval in the night's progression. This was timekeeping on a deeply human scale. The system did not measure abstract degrees or minutes. It measured the passage of celestial bodies relative to a man sitting on the earth, connecting the vastness of the cosmos directly to the human form. Think of the quiet ritual, the astronomer motionless but for the slow sweep of his arm, his eye tracing a star's path along a wooden ruler. The scratch marks on that palm rib were a direct transcript of the heavens, a physical record of the goddess Nut's turning body. It was a primitive clock, yes, but its genius was in its simplicity. It translated the infinite, whirling dance of the stars into a countable, manageable rhythm, one notch at a time, allowing the ancient Egyptians to hold time itself in the palm of their hand. This same celestial precision, mastered with the merkhet and palm rib, was carved into the very stone of the Giza Plateau. The Great Pyramid does not simply sit upon the earth, it is locked in a silent, perfect conversation with the heavens. Its builders did not just cite the imperishable stars to align the base, they engineered the entire structure as a monumental star map. Deep within the pyramid, a narrow, steeply sloping passageway known as the descending corridor was not built at a random angle. For centuries, the prevailing theory has pointed to a long-vanished star. Around the time of the pyramid's construction, the north celestial pole was not marked by our familiar Polaris. Instead, it was guarded by a star called Thuban or Alpha Draconis in the constellation of the Dragon. This star was the true pole of that age, the anchor around which all other stars appeared to turn. The descending passage is aligned with such breathtaking accuracy that it would have framed Thuban perfectly, a dark, man-made tunnel pointing like an arrow directly at the still heart of the nocturnal sky. Anyone standing inside that corridor in the deep night of the Old Kingdom would have seen this single, brilliant pole star shining at the end of the stone shaft, a constant reminder of the pharaoh's ultimate destination among the eternal stars. But the stellar connections reach even deeper into the pyramid's core. From the king's chamber, two narrow shafts, often called air vents, pierce the massive masonry, one aimed north and the other south. The northern shaft targets the circumpolar, imperishable stars, the realm of eternal life. The southern shaft, however, points with stunning intention toward the one star that ruled their earthly existence. This narrow tunnel was not for air, it was a pathway for the soul. It was aligned directly at Sirius, the brilliant Soptet. At the precise moment of its heliacal rising, the soul of the departed king could travel up this celestial conduit, joining with the star that signaled renewal and rebirth. His spirit would merge with Osiris, the god of the afterlife, who was himself intimately linked with Sirius. Think of the profound symbolism woven into this granite architecture. The pyramid was not a tomb in the sense of a final resting place. It was a launch complex, a machine designed to harness the power of the stars to propel the pharaoh's essence from the temporal world into the eternal cycle of the cosmos. Every stone, every angle was calculated to connect the mortal with the divine, using the only reliable map they had, the star-studded body of the sky itself. The same celestial science built into the pyramids was later condensed into a personal guide for the afterlife, painted onto the inside of a coffin lid. These intricate diagrams, known today as diagonal star clocks, are among the most sophisticated astronomical documents to survive from ancient Egypt. Far from simple decoration, they are complex tables of time, a grid of 36 decans arranged in 13 rows. Each row represents a 10-day week, and each column charts the journey of a single decan star across the night sky throughout the entire year. The genius of the design is in its diagonal lines. As you follow a specific decan's name across the chart, it shifts one position diagonally with each new week. This diagonal movement is a direct visual representation of a simple celestial fact. A star rises about 4 minutes earlier each night, which over a 10-day period adds up to a shift of roughly 40 minutes, or the equivalent of one seasonal hour. The chart accounts for this relentless drift with elegant, painted lines. Imagine a priest or a scribe consulting this grid. He could determine not only the hour of the night, but also the specific week of the year, all from observing which decan was rising at a given moment. This was a portable, personal star almanac, but its ultimate purpose was not for the living. Placed inside a coffin, this clock became a spiritual tool for the deceased. It provided the departed soul with the knowledge to navigate the 12 hours of the night in the underworld, a dangerous journey where knowing the time meant knowing which gods were in power and which spells to recite for protection. The soul could use this painted chart to keep track of the decanal hours, ensuring it passed safely through each gateway of the Jewat to be reborn with the sun at dawn. This was the final, crucial application of their star lore, a perfect fusion of science and faith, ensuring that the celestial knowledge that guided a farmer through his life could also guide a soul through eternity. The dark waters of the Nile mirrored the star-strewn sky, creating a world of liquid night. For a sailor guiding his vessel after sunset, this was the only road. With no landmarks on the shadowed banks and the river's current a silent, unseen force, his survival depended on the fixed sentinels above. His primary guide was the unmoving hub of the northern sky, the circle of imperishable stars. To travel south, upriver against the current, he simply kept the circumpolar stars on his right-hand side, their eternal wheel a constant companion. To journey north, down river with the flow, he kept them on his left. This single, unbreakable rule oriented his entire world. He was not navigating by a complex map, but by a fundamental relationship with the cosmos, his boat a tiny speck moving in harmony with the turning heavens. The river itself became a partner in this celestial dance. On a windless night, the current would carry him downstream while he used the stars to hold his vessel steady in the channel, avoiding the invisible sandbanks that lurked just beneath the surface. A shift in the star's position relative to the mast could signal a dangerous drift. The pilot's skill lay in reading the subtle conversation between the water's pull and the sky's fixed points, a continuous, gentle correction to stay on course. He was threading a needle in the dark, using the only constants he had, the deathless stars that never set, to find his way home. The same stars that guided a pharaoh's soul and a sailor's boat also carved invisible highways across the sand. Picture a desert caravan moving through the western desert, a place where dunes shift like ocean waves and the horizon is a shimmering, featureless line. Here, a single wrong turn meant disappearing into a waterless void. For these traders, the imperishable stars of the north were not just symbols of eternity, they were a literal compass. Their method was one of elegant simplicity. The caravan master would identify the unmoving hub of the northern sky, the tight circle around which all other stars wheeled. Once he had fixed this point, he would choose a specific star within that circle, perhaps the bright guardian Kochab, and use it as his pivot. He would then observe the angle between that chosen star and the horizon directly ahead of him. That angle was his bearing. To maintain his course due west toward a distant oasis, he had to keep that exact angle constant throughout the long, cold night. It was a continuous act of correction. As the Earth turned and the entire star field slowly rotated around the pole, the caravan master would make tiny adjustments to his direction, ensuring his star remained in its precise position relative to his line of travel. He was, in effect, walking a straight line by keeping a celestial marker glued to his shoulder. The desert offered no paths, but the sky provided a rail he could follow with absolute trust. Imagine the concentration required, the constant upward glances, the mental calculation performed under a blanket of stars. Every hour, the sky's configuration changed, yet the relationship he held with his guiding star did not. This was not about reaching for a destination you could see. It was about holding faith in a geometry of light, trusting that the same stars that never set would lead you to a hidden pocket of water and life. The desert was a blank slate, but the imperishable ones drew a perfect, unwavering map across it. Yet the sun's rising banished these star maps from the sky, replacing them with a single, dominant beacon. For the Egyptians, the sun was not merely a ball of fire, it was the god Ra traversing the heavens in his divine solar bark. This celestial vessel sailed from east to west each day, a journey of rebirth, battle, and ultimate triumph. While the stars offered a complex clock of decans, the sun provided a straightforward, blazing road. Its predictable path from the eastern horizon at dawn to the western horizon at dusk gave anyone a clear east-west axis. A traveler on the Nile or in the desert simply had to observe the sun's position relative to his own to know his orientation. In the morning, the sun ahead meant you were facing east, at your back meant west. By midday, when the sun reached its zenith, its shadow provided a true north-south line. This solar knowledge seamlessly complemented the stellar navigation of the night. A journey did not halt at sunrise, it simply changed its mode of guidance. The same river pilot who had steered by the imperishable stars hours before would now watch the sun's glare on the water, using Ra's own boat as his guide. The concept was deeply embedded in their worldview. They believed that just as Ra sailed through the sky, the pharaoh after death would join the crew of this solar bark, eternally navigating the celestial river. So for an Egyptian, traveling by day was not just a practical act, it was a participation in the god's daily cycle of renewal. The sun did not erase the knowledge of the stars, it completed it, creating a perfect, unbroken cycle of celestial guidance that powered their world from dawn until dusk and back again. But the moon offered its own kind of guidance, a softer light that ruled the coastal waters. For sailors venturing onto the Red Sea or skirting the Mediterranean coast, the moon was a vital ally. Its predictable cycle of waxing and waning provided a secondary calendar, a rhythm of months that governed shorter voyages and religious festivals tied to its phases. A full moon did more than just light up the night, it transformed the coastline. Under its brilliant glow, the dark, menacing shapes of headlands and rocky outcrops became clearly visible, allowing a pilot to navigate treacherous passages he would have to avoid in a pitch-black night. He could judge his distance from the shore by how the moonlight reflected off the water or silhouetted the palm trees, turning the entire shoreline into a recognizable map. The moon itself also served as a directional marker. A sailor would note its position relative to a familiar, bright star. If he knew that on a particular night the moon hung just to the left of the star Sirius, that relationship became a temporary signpost. As the night progressed and both the moon and the stars drifted westward, he could still use their fixed separation to maintain his bearing. This was celestial navigation in a more fluid, dynamic form, using the moon as a moving reference point in the great star field. While the sun and the imperishable stars provided the grand, unchanging structure, the moon offered the nuance, the detailed, shifting light that made the difference between a safe harbor and a shipwreck on an unseen reef. Its silent, cyclical journey across the sky was another layer of time and space, perfectly integrated into the Egyptians' mastery of the heavens. This relentless pursuit of celestial precision was never a purely academic exercise. It was a race against time fueled by a desperate, sacred need. The very survival of the pharaoh's soul depended on it. Their entire cosmology was built on a simple, terrifying truth. The sun god Ra triumphed over the serpent of chaos, Apophis, every single night in the underworld, but that victory was never guaranteed. It required the combined strength of the gods and the correct, timely spells from the deceased king. If the pharaoh's soul, traveling with Ra in the solar bark, did not know the precise hour of the night or the name of the decan star ruling that hour, he could not recite the proper incantation. A single mistake, a moment of celestial confusion, could mean the sun would not rise and chaos would swallow the world. This was the immense pressure that drove their observations. Every chart of a star's transit, every notch carved into a palm rib, was a piece of a divine rescue mission. The astronomer on the temple roof was not just a scientist, he was a linchpin in the cosmic order. His work ensured the pharaoh had the celestial data needed to navigate the 12 perilous gates of the Jewat, to defeat the demons of the night, and to guarantee the sun's rebirth at dawn. Can you feel the weight of that responsibility? A mistake in his stargazing could, in their belief system, lead to literal cosmic collapse. This profound religious imperative is what transformed simple sky watching into a meticulous, generations-long scientific project. They were not just mapping stars, they were writing the operating manual for the universe, one decan at a time, to keep the darkness at bay and maintain the fragile balance of Mat, the principle of truth and order. Their gods did not hand them this knowledge, they demanded it be discovered, and so the Egyptians looked up night after night for thousands of years, driven by the most powerful motivator of all, the need to save the world every single day from eternal night. Centuries after the pyramids pierced the sky, their celestial knowledge was distilled into a practical guide you could hold in your hands. A remarkable demotic papyrus written around the 1st or 2nd century serves as a celestial handbook for its age. This was not a text of grand myths, but a working manual for the astronomer priest, filled with precise, actionable data. Its columns of script detailed the exact rising and setting times of the most important stars, and even tracked the wandering paths of the planets, which the Egyptians saw as the gods themselves moving through the heavens. This document represents the culmination of over 2,000 years of observation, a codification of the entire celestial system into a single, portable source. Imagine the shift this represents. No longer did every temple need a master astronomer who had memorized the decanal sequences over a lifetime of study. Now a trained scribe could consult this papyrus and know that on the 15th night of the month of Pani, the star Sirius would rise at a specific hour, or that the planet Jupiter would be visible in a particular constellation. This was the democratization of celestial science, moving from an oral, experiential tradition to a standardized, written one. The papyrus did not just record star positions, it mapped their movements against the civil calendar, creating a unified system that linked the earth-bound bureaucracy of the state with the eternal rhythms of the cosmos. The creation of this handbook signals a profound evolution, a civilization so confident in its understanding of the sky that it could write the final, definitive instructions for reading it. High on the ceiling of a hidden tomb, the entire night sky is frozen in stone. This is the final resting place of Senenmut, the brilliant architect who designed Queen Hatshepsut's magnificent mortuary temple. But here, far from the grand colonnades, he commissioned a different kind of masterpiece. Above his sarcophagus, the ceiling is not merely decorated. It is a precise, sprawling chart of the heavens, one of the most complete celestial maps ever discovered from ancient Egypt. It is a snapshot of the cosmos as they knew it, painted for a man who understood the power of alignment. The diagram is divided into two clear sections. On the northern half, you see the familiar, comforting circle of the imperishable stars. The Meskhetiyu, the bull's thigh constellation, is prominently featured, its familiar shape a constant in the turning sky. But look closer and you will find the planets, the wanderers, placed meticulously among the fixed stars. Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn are all there, depicted not as points of light but as divine figures, gods sailing their own tiny boats through the celestial sea. This was a live map acknowledging the dynamic, moving elements within the stable clockwork of the night. The southern half of the ceiling is dedicated to the 36 decans, the star groups that govern the passage of the hours and the weeks. Each is represented by a figure, a god or a symbol, and they march in their procession across the sky. This is not random art, it is a functional schematic. A priest could have used this very ceiling to verify which decan should be rising on a given night of the year. Why place such a detailed cosmic map in a tomb? For Senenmut, the master builder, it was the ultimate blueprint. His spirit needed this chart to navigate the afterlife as surely as he once navigated the complexities of construction. The ceiling provided him with a permanent, unfailing guide to the decanal hours, ensuring he would always know the correct time in the underworld to recite the spells that would see him through to rebirth. It was his personal, permanent star clock, a guarantee that the celestial knowledge that ordered his life would also order his eternity. The theoretical backbone for all this celestial practice was a text of profound depth known to us as the Book of Nut. This was not a simple stargazer's manual, but a comprehensive cosmological treatise that laid out the entire operating system of the universe. It described the sky goddess Nut in the most intimate detail, charting the daily journey of the sun god Ra as he traveled across her star-dusted belly by day, only to be swallowed by her each evening to pass through her body through the 12 hours of the night. The moon, too, had its designated path and cycle within her form, but the text went even further, offering a complete taxonomy of the stars themselves. It classified them into those that never set, the imperishable ones, and those that rise and set, the indefatigable stars, explaining their precise movements and their relationship to the decans that measured the hours. This was the grand theory that made sense of every practical observation. When a priest used his merkhet to time a star's transit, he was testing a principle laid out in the Book of Nut. When a sailor kept the northern stars on his right to sail south, he was enacting a geographical truth described in its cosmology. The book provided the why behind the how, transforming isolated techniques into a unified science. It explained that the sun's journey was not just a crossing of the sky, but a cyclical process of death and rebirth that the entire nation participated in. The decans were not just timekeepers, they were the divine entities who governed each stage of this cosmic process. This foundational text gave every act of navigation, from aligning a pyramid to steering a boat, a deeper, sacred meaning. It was the celestial constitution, the ultimate authority that assured them the sky was not a chaos of random lights, but a perfectly ordered, divine machine whose principles could be understood, trusted, and used to guide a civilization. Even the most precise celestial clocks are not immune to the turning of the earthly world. As foreign powers cast their shadows across the Nile, first with the Persians and later with the armies of Alexander the Great, the insular world of Egyptian astronomy faced an unprecedented challenge. The conquerors brought with them their own ways of seeing the heavens, a Greek perspective that viewed the cosmos as a physical mechanism rather than the living body of a goddess. This was a fundamental shift, a collision of two cosmic worldviews. Egyptian priests, now serving under new masters, found their ancient, star-guided rituals intersecting with the geometric models and philosophical inquiries of the Greeks. The result was not an immediate erasure, but a slow and complex merging. The familiar decans, the 36 star groups that had measured time for millennia, were adopted by Greek astronomers living in Alexandria, who mapped them onto their own zodiacal system. You can see this fusion in artifacts like the Dendera zodiac, a breathtaking bas-relief that depicts the classic Egyptian decans alongside the Babylonian-inspired signs of the zodiac. It is a beautiful hybrid sky, but it also signals a quiet loss. The deep, sacred stories attached to each decan, the specific myths that explained why a certain star group ruled a particular 10-day week, began to fade from common knowledge, replaced by a more standardized, if less personal, international system. The very language of the stars was changing. Where an Old Kingdom priest would have seen the goddess Nut arching overhead, a Hellenistic scholar might see a celestial sphere governed by mathematical laws. This was progress of a kind, but it came at a cost. The intimate, divine dialogue that had guided pharaohs and farmers alike was slowly being silenced, not by force, but by the slow, inexorable tide of a new way of thinking. The silent observations of those temple priests did not vanish with the sands. Their meticulous work became the bedrock upon which later civilizations would build our modern understanding of the cosmos. Look up at the sky tonight, and you are seeing it through a lens they helped to grind. The most profound legacy lies in the very structure of our year. It was the Egyptian fixation on the heliacal rising of Sirius that cemented the concept of a 365-day solar calendar. They noticed that their lunar calendar drifted out of sync with the seasons, but the Sothic cycle, the period between Sirius's annual risings, was far more reliable. This decision to anchor their civil calendar to a solar event rather than the moon was a revolutionary leap. The Greeks and later the Romans recognized the sheer practicality of this system. When Julius Caesar needed to reform the chaotic Roman calendar, he turned to the Egyptian model, consulting an Alexandrian astronomer to create the Julian calendar, a direct ancestor of the one we use today. Every time you mark a date, you are participating in a timekeeping tradition that began with an Egyptian priest spotting a single star at dawn. But their influence stretches even further into the stars themselves. The Greek astronomer Eudoxus, who studied in Egypt, brought back their system of 36 decans. He mapped these Egyptian star groups onto the Greek zodiac, dividing the ecliptic into the 12 signs we still recognize. The names and forms changed from the Egyptian bull's thigh to the Greek bear, but the underlying principle of dividing the celestial sphere into manageable, observable segments was an Egyptian invention. Can you see the unbroken thread? From a farmer waiting for the Nile flood signaled by Sopdet, to a Greek philosopher sketching constellations, to you looking up at the Big Dipper, the legacy of Egyptian star navigation is written in light across the centuries. They were the first great cartographers of the night, and every star chart that followed owes a debt to the maps they painted on coffin lids and temple ceilings. To truly grasp their genius, we must step out of the museum and under the open sky. A modern experiment is taking shape, one that strips away our satellites and digital maps, leaving only a reconstructed merkhet, a notched palm rib, and a hand-copied star chart. A team of dedicated researchers and skilled sailors aims to navigate a stretch of the Nile at night, using nothing but the methods of the ancient Egyptians. Their vessel is a traditional felucca, its single sail silent in the dark. Their challenge is immense. The first hurdle is the sky itself. Modern light pollution has washed away the faintest stars, leaving a dimmer version of the brilliant canopy the Egyptians knew. The experimenters must travel far from cities to find a sky dark enough to see all 36 decans clearly. Then comes the human element. The merkhet requires a steady hand and an immense amount of patience. Aligning the plumb line with a specific star as it crosses the meridian is a skill that takes weeks to master, not minutes to learn. A slight tremor, a moment of misjudgment, and the precise hour of the night is lost. The palm rib clock is no easier. Sitting perfectly still for hours, tracking a star's ascent against the notches, is a test of physical and mental endurance. Your body becomes the instrument's foundation, and any shift in posture ruins the measurement. What could this arduous journey reveal? Success would be a stunning confirmation of their system's raw accuracy, proving that with trained observers, these simple tools could indeed guide a vessel safely along the winding river. But even partial failure would be a different kind of revelation. It would highlight the incredible depth of knowledge that was passed down through generations. This was not a hobby, it was a profession. The experiment would reveal the sheer amount of practice and ingrained skill required to make this celestial clockwork tick. The true discovery might not be that their methods worked, but understanding the lifetime of dedication it took to make them work flawlessly. Could you, relying solely on the stars and a piece of string, find your way home? The precision of their star maps often sparks a modern question, one that underestimates the power of human dedication. Could people without telescopes truly achieve such celestial accuracy, or does this point to an otherworldly intelligence, a lost civilization handing down secrets? The answer is written not in alien code, but in the patient, cumulative work of generations. Consider the timeline. The system of decans was not invented in a single lifetime. Its development spans from the earliest coffin texts of the Old Kingdom to the sophisticated diagonal star clocks of the Middle Kingdom, a progression of over 1,000 years. This was not a sudden gift, but a slow, meticulous refinement. Each generation of priests built upon the records of the last, correcting errors, noting subtle shifts, and adding new layers of understanding. They were not waiting for a spaceship to deliver a manual, they were writing it themselves, one night of observation at a time. The tools themselves tell a story of human ingenuity, not alien technology. The merkhet is a plumb line and a sighting stick, devices any skilled carpenter could replicate. The star clock palm rib is a notched piece of wood. These are not complex machines, they are extensions of the human eye and hand refined through endless repetition. The real magic was not in the tool, but in the disciplined mind using it. An alien explanation also ignores the clear, practical motivations driving their research. They were not measuring stars for abstract knowledge. Their civilization's food supply, their religious ceremonies, their king's journey to the afterlife all depended on this data. The pressure to get it right was immense and entirely earthly. When you see the Great Pyramid's perfect alignment, you are not seeing proof of visitors from another world. You are witnessing the culmination of centuries of stargazers on the Giza Plateau, carefully tracking the circumpolar stars, passing their knowledge from master to apprentice. This was a human achievement, a testament to what can be accomplished when a culture focuses its collective intellect on a single, sacred problem for generations. To credit aliens is to erase the legacy of those nameless astronomers who stood in the cold night, year after year, patiently mapping the heavens to build a civilization in harmony with the cosmos. Two civilizations separated by a planet of ocean, both mastered the art of celestial wayfinding. The Egyptians charted their course along the predictable river of the Nile, their eyes fixed on the northern circumpolar stars that never set. An entire ocean away, the Polynesians faced a vaster, more fluid challenge, the trackless Pacific. Their world had no fixed North Star to anchor them, for as they sailed south, the familiar constellations dipped below the horizon, replaced by an entirely new cast of celestial players. Their genius lay not in worshipping the unmoving stars, but in mapping the moving ones, the stars that passed directly overhead. They memorized the zenith stars, the specific points of light that stood at the very summit of the sky for each of their island archipelagos. A navigator knew that when the star Arcturus was directly above him, his canoe was positioned at the latitude of the Hawaiian Islands. When Sirius took its place at the zenith, he had reached the latitude of Tahiti. This created a celestial grid of invisible highways across the water, a map written in the highest points of the night. While the Egyptian sailor used the imperishable stars as a compass to maintain a bearing, the Polynesian wayfinder used the zenith stars as a signpost to confirm his arrival. Their tools reflected this fundamental difference. The Egyptian relied on the merkhet and palm rib, instruments of precise timekeeping and alignment. The Polynesian navigator used no instruments at all. His body was his tool. He would lie down in the hull of his canoe, feeling its pitch and roll, and observe how a specific star moved relative to the mast. He read the ocean swells themselves, sensing the reflected patterns of distant islands, and he watched the flight paths of birds that would return to land at dusk. His was a holistic science that blended celestial observation with a deep, intuitive feel for the natural world. The Egyptian system was born from a stable, agricultural society oriented around a single, life-giving river and a pharaoh's journey to a fixed, eternal north. The Polynesian system was the product of a migratory, ocean-going culture that had to be fluid, adaptable, and capable of discovering new lands over the horizon. One looked to the still center of the turning sky for eternal truth. The other looked to the entire moving dome to find a new home. Both solved the ultimate human problem of finding their way, but they listened to different parts of the same cosmic song. The ultimate destination for every Egyptian soul was not beneath the ground, but high above it, among the silent, eternal lights. This journey to the afterlife was the most critical voyage of all, and it required the finest celestial navigation. The Duat was not a place of fire and brimstone, but a vast, complex underworld, a dark, watery realm with 12 regions, each corresponding to an hour of the night. To reach the dawn of eternal life, the soul had to successfully navigate this treacherous, star-lit landscape, and its only map was written in the stars themselves. Spells from the pyramid texts and coffin texts served as the literal navigational charts for this final passage. They were not prayers in our sense, but precise technical instructions for the soul. One spell might command, take to the northern sky, put yourself among the imperishable stars. This was a direct order to locate the circumpolar stars, the deathless ones, and use their fixed position as a celestial north star to orient the entire journey. Another spell would provide the secret names of the guardian gods of each of the 12 gates of the night, names that had to be recited at the exact moment the soul approached. How did the soul know which gate it was facing? By recognizing which decan star was ruling that specific hour. The soul had to be its own astronomer, identifying the decan rising in the east to know what time it was in the underworld and which spell to use. A mistake meant being turned back, consumed by demons, or trapped in eternal darkness. The stakes could not be higher. The soul's goal was to merge with Osiris, the god of the afterlife and regeneration, who was himself intimately linked with the star Sirius. But to reach him, the spirit had to first join the sun god Ra in his solar bark, fighting off the serpent of chaos, Apophis, hour by hour. This was a cosmic relay race where the baton was the soul's own existence, and the only way to win was to read the sky with perfect accuracy. The knowledge of the stars, so vital for farmers and sailors in life, became the very key to immortality in death, proving that for the Egyptians, the boundary between the earthly and the divine was just a line drawn in starlight. Their celestial science was a single, unbreakable thread, weaving the divine body of a goddess to the harvest calendar of a farmer, the soul of a king to the alignment of a pyramid. This was not a collection of separate disciplines, but a unified world where mythology gave meaning to science and science gave precision to faith. The same stars that whispered the secret of the Nile's flood to a priest also illuminated the path for a desert caravan and guided a pharaoh's spirit on its final, perilous voyage. Their legacy is not confined to dusty papyri or museum cases. It is literally set in stone, a permanent record of their cosmic alignment carved into the very bedrock of their civilization. The enduring perfection of the Great Pyramid's orientation is a silent shout across millennia, a testament to a people who looked up and saw not random points of light, but a perfect divine machine they could learn to read. Their story invites you to reclaim a piece of that lost sky. On the next clear night, step away from the city's glow and find a patch of true darkness. Let your eyes adjust, look north and find the steady pivot of the Big Dipper, the imperishable ones they saw as a celestial engine of time and a ladder to eternity. Then find Sirius, the brilliant diamond whose first dawn appearance once set an entire kingdom in motion. For a moment, try to see it not as a distant sun, but as Soptit, the herald of life and renewal. In that simple act of looking up, you are not just stargazing, you are participating in the oldest human dialogue of all, connecting with the minds of those ancient navigators who taught us how to find our way by trusting the only map that never fades.